exceeded the LEU could have it. It's not against the rules, but it's against the rules if you are giving it to them instead of somebody who's more eligible. Make sense? So just keep in mind, all of this stuff is kind of linked, not kind of, but it is linked together. Excuse me. Oh, one thing I'd bring up. If a student is at your institution in the academic year, or the award year, fall and spring, they meet, you have awarded them SEOG. We have a packaging formula that runs through a formula, you guys do. You know, a lot of people do that. If they're eligible for fall only, let's say they got only 50% left, they're at 550%, they can get 50% of their Pell, they exhaust that at the end of fall, you've awarded them SEOG because they're a 0 ESC and they were there and you awarded it, it's okay that they get the spring round. There was some question about that, but that at the beginning of the year they were Pell eligible in that award year. So just a clarification on that. Example 1, student schedule award for the year is $5,000. But the student enrolled for only one semester, so the student received $2,500 or 50% of the schedule award that year. The student schedule award is $5,000, but the student enrolls at 3/4 time for both semesters and receives $3,750 for the year. Student receives 75% of that award. Just simple math, right? Considering a student receives 50% of the schedule award for 1 year and 75% the next year, the LEU is 125%. So that's where I'm coming into, you know, the conversation about it could take you 7 or 8 years to use up 600% or what they typically cost 6 years. You will hear your higher ups outside of financial aid talk about there's only 6 years worth of Pell. Yeah, not necessarily. You know, it's not just a 6 years, it's not a time frame. It's a percentage of how much of their scheduled award they've used. Any questions? Because I'm that good, right? No, Sean's that good. He's got all this information up here for you. So
it's all about the session leader.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Like I said, but poor boy, I don't get much of that compliment anymore. I learned a long time ago that I was the dumbest mama in the world. How about y'all? You probably are one of those too. Yeah, see?
I'm going to talk to my brother-in-law and give you more compliments.
Yeah, you need to talk to your brother-in-law. See, if Kachi didn't tell you, which I know she did, because you have to hear about Kyler if you got Kachi in front of you. You heard about Kyler, right?
Because he got me done off by telling me the last name of Richardson.
Oh.
I introduced her as Kachi Richardson.
You forgot she got married 7 years ago. It's okay, Sean.
I didn't tell about your goddaughter.
My goddaughter is her little girl. So Kachi went through, I met Kachi 20 years ago. I was just thinking about that. And my second son is getting ready to turn 20, so I had just had him. So Kachi and I met that long ago, because we're old like that, right? She couldn't for the life of her figure out why I couldn't talk on the phone. Okay, hold on. Would you be quiet? I'm trying to talk on the phone. You know, all this kind of stuff. And she's talking to me about this and talking to me about that. I am so loving that my friend has a 4-year-old little girl. It is the most wonderful thing to hear her. Hang on. I'm sorry, Bridge. I'm sorry. Hang on. Kylie, what are you doing? Right? I am loving
I
it.
used to be so annoyed. I remember I had a conversation with her and she, representing the kids. Now the tables turn, She started talking to me.
On a side note, since it's all about us right now, right? Kachi and I met through financial aid. We met. She was director of financial aid at Johnston Community College. I was the director of financial aid and student services at East Carolina School of Medicine at the time. As Bowman Gray now, they've changed it. So, and so we met through NCASFA, our professional association. So we've been doing this, and I say that to tell you, some of the people that you'll meet today, some of the people that you'll meet in the future if you attend some of the training conferences can and will become your best friends. I would take nothing for her, and I guess she wouldn't take anything from me either, I hope.
But $1 million making
yeah.
But I was sharing with
everything has its price, right? But I'm just saying, we talk financial aid, we talk girl stuff, we talk kid stuff. You know, this is a great profession. Again, another freebie, but just know that, you know, we're in North Carolina, we're a very strong group of connected professionals. So take and learn, you know, you can go back and read a lot of this stuff, but the relationships that you forge here, as well as when you go to other sessions and other training, whether it's federal, whether it's state, you know, take advantage of all of that, because we're all here to help one another, okay? Just thought I'd mention that. You can call me too, hopefully. My contact information on all this stuff?
I'll be giving it to him.
Okay, I thought you would.
Yeah.
I thought you would. No, it's perfectly fine. Look, I couldn't have made it if, you know, couldn't have made it if I didn't have people to bounce things off of. Okay, declining or returning Pell by a student. Don't know why, I have never, ever run into a situation where a student has declined their Pell Grant. But in this new day, when a student is running into the 600%, I could see that if a student is at a community college here in North Carolina and a state resident where the cost is lower, that they may want to refuse their Pell Grant knowing they're going to transfer to Barton College, which is a private institution, and that Pell Grant be used there. I have not run into that, but I could see that that's happening. So just know that you could do that. It sounds odd and it may not seem so stupid when if you hear somebody come say, I don't want a Pell Grant. Are you kidding me? You know, that's what I would say. But you need to get a signed written statement provided by the student and the funds returned within the award year, if they'd already been awarded that, and the institution adjusts its records through COD. You may not have even gone through COD, but make sure you have documentation. Again, if nobody said this, I do a presentation for Sean in the past on cost of attendance, and document, reasonable, document, make sure it's all reasonable. That applies to anything in financial aid. You know, get a signed statement. Yes, I know it's self-reported, as is a lot of the things on the FAFSA, but you need to cover yourself for, you know, any kind of internal audit or especially a federal audit. So make sure you cover yourself. Everybody say bye, Kachi. Bye, Kachi.
You guys enjoy. I was gonna say you like that in the world.
When she leaves, I'll give you the real story. Love you, bye. Be careful. Kiss my baby.
I will.
So, student declined their Pell Grant. So know that the student can do that, right? The student institution may not package additional Title IV aid to compensate. So you cannot use Title IV aid to compensate for the Pell that they choose not to get. Okay? Just be careful with that. Sean and I decided this fraction that you're seeing here, really what I want to bring to your attention is how that COD doesn't use this, or they do use the cent, sometimes your systems do not. In this calculation, if you have a copy of this presentation, what this is referring to in the handbook, if you look at that reference in the handbook, is those schools who have non-standard terms. Anybody here have a non-standard term? I did, so I recognized it right away. Trust me, pretend you never saw it. You don't want a non-standard term, okay? Determining an annual award. Credit hour term-based programs. That's what typically most people are in. It's a credit hour term-based. You use full-time payment schedule for full-time students, and you use the appropriate disbursement schedules for 3/4 time, half time, and less than half time, meaning that payment schedule that you're looking at. Clock hour, anybody clock hour? I do have a clock hour in here, okay? Or non-term credit hour programs use the full-time payment schedule as well. And again, there's specifics that guide you on how and what you're supposed to do with that. Sometimes your system is probably, are you data tail? Yeah, your system is probably helping you do that. Now, again, your system's helping you do that, but what we want you to make sure you understand and know is how it's doing it, right? So some of the details we're giving you, and I fall prey to it all the time, that my system just does, the system, it's got to be right. Well, if the system screws up, guess where that falls? It falls right on you. So you need to have some level of understanding. Sean, are they going to do a hand calculation too this time?
No, we removed the hand count. I believe.
I'm mad now, just like I know. Because that was wonderful fun that you got to do a FAFSA, and you got to calculate how all of the income and the tax allowances and all of those things play into how that expected family contribution is done. That's because I'm old school, and yes, we have systems that do that for us now, and that's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to lobby. Y'all got out.
I was just going to say, that was removed, but I'm making note that we need to put the hand count back in, seriously.
It's just a good exercise. There are folks, Rosemary, you haven't met Rosemary. Did you meet Rosemary yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Rosemary will present to
This
you.
afternoon.
She could probably sit down and do a hand calculation because she came through the time that that's the way we had to do financial aid. We are come a long way. I remember processing Pell Grants with a bubble sheet, bubbling the amount, 1, 2, literally, and then sending that back in a packet to the federal government. And I remember my financial aid director being panicked because we had to send a floppy disk. Come a long way. Come a long way. Aren't you glad you have your systems now? And we do get very dependent on that. And what I see happening is, even with myself, a lack of understanding of how it all comes together and fits together. Not because I'm dumb or anybody new. It's just because we have systems that depend on that. Same as our phones and all of that. You know, kids can't talk anymore because of it too. Again, I won't go over on that. with my 4 boys again, who can't seem to communicate with anybody other than this. Pell Grant formulas. Anybody realize there was more than one formula to a Pell Grant? Got yes and no? You have your Formula 1, which is typically what we all use for fall, spring, 30 weeks, 12 or more hours is full time, so on and so forth. Formula 2 is the standard term programs with less than 30 weeks of instruction. That's not talking about your semester, it's talking about your academic year, but that can happen. Formula 3, term-based programs that do not qualify for Formula 1 and 2. I had to use Formula 3 when I started at Martin 5 years ago. Formula 3, because they had an adult program that was unique. We'll just use that word. We are now in 2 modules in a semester, and we're back to Formula 1 Pell. But just understand, there are other formulas if your situation, if you think you have an unusual situation, because I can promise you that the upper administration are trying, especially those of you at the private institutions, it's happening some at the publics, but most likely at the privates, they're trying to get real creative to recruit students in any way that they can make a net tuition revenue and keep themselves, valid, if you will, and in business. So they'll come up with a lot of creative things to do. You need to know that if they get too creative, it might not fit into a very attractive way to process Pell and financial aid. So just be cautious that you get in if you hear that rumbling, because I won't guarantee it, but I can promise you that not every time will you be included in those conversations until after it's already been decided. So you need to know that there are other ways that you have to process if things get creative. I just call it creative recruiting. 5 steps of calculating the Pell Award. Determine the student's enrollment status, their cost of attendance, determine the student's annual Pell Grant Award, determine the payment period or the academic term, and determine the payment amount for each payment period. I think we understand that. That all depends on what I call the student's behavior at your school, right? Another case study, Formula 1 for full-time enrollment. Gertrude is just beginning a program in applied math in Store Hill University. Her program's academic year has 30 weeks of instruction, full-time is 12. All terms, including the summer, are standard. Her program has no overlapping terms. Keep that in mind. You can't have overlapping terms and pay a Pell Grant. Make sure you remember that. That's one thing that stands out to me in this. She is enrolled for fall semester courses totaling 13 credit hours. Her cost of attendance has been established at $96.50. Her EFC is $15.01. Formula 1 is appropriate because she uses credit hours. Full-time enrollment full-time enrollment is 12 or more hours. Academic year is 30 weeks. All terms are standard, no overlapping terms. Therefore, it's standard. Again, I think we all pretty much follow. Anybody think they have any kind of non-standard? Okay, good. What is Gertrude's fall semester enrollment status? I think we determined she's full-time. We said all of that. You guys can read that. Skipping another one. Don't tell Sean. For non-term credit hour programs, clock hour programs, calculate payment for the period by multiplying the schedule award by the lesser of the following fractions. So use these fractions if you're in a situation that you need to. No one raised their hands, I'm going to skip that too. But know that if you get into a creativity situation, they're specific. It's in the handbook, it will guide you through it, it guided me through it. I had to reference it almost daily to make sure I got the students' Pell calculated accurately. And at that point in time, I was doing it all manually. We weren't pulling ICERs into a system, so I was going down the payment schedule, using the worksheet, writing it all down, and adding it all up. Not fun. So be very careful that, again, it's going to come back to you. Again, we're talking non-standard. I'm going to skip over the non-standard terms since none of you have those. The major thing I would say, again, is just be aware that you don't want to get into a situation. It's not wrong, but if you get in a situation of non-standard terms, you need to be hypersensitive to how you process your aid that way. Transfer students, Pell is calculated in the same way as for any student. Their remaining eligibility. Again, I mentioned this before. If you have a transfer student, you're going to have to make sure you know what their Pell Grant eligibility was at the previous institution. Certain things need to come to your mind. Is if you look at a student and they've not used any Pell Grant for the year, right? They're yearly, they haven't used any, and you know they're Pell eligible, and you also know they were at a Pell eligible participating school. The school may not have processed yet. Certain things are red flags to you to make sure you calculate that Pell eligibility correctly. So again, just make sure you're looking at that. If they've used 50%, they get 50%, right? If they've used 25%, right, at the school that they were at, then you give them the appropriate amount for the spring semester. In that case, that student may be eligible for summer Pell, depending on if they go. So just again, that all goes back. remember that before dispersing FSA funds, FSA, everybody know? Federal Student Aid. I don't ever assume anything, because I don't know who presented before me. They might not have known. Kachi might not have known. Just kidding. Federal Student Aid funds to transfer student. The financial aid administrator must obtain a financial aid history for the student and must inform NSLDS that out the transfer students at the school can receive updates through the transfer monitoring process, which is a new process there. Got to learn a lot more about that even myself, because it's brand new. Calculating the cost of attendance. Cost of attendance components are the same as for other federal student aid programs. You guys know some of these. It's tuition and fees, books, supplies, transportation, miscellaneous and personal expenses, room and board, dependent care if you're using that, study abroad expenses, disability. There's a list of things that you have to use. Again, you have to be careful that you are using those appropriately, that you're not just increasing cost of attendance because the student came in and said, I need more money. And unless we're going to do that, you're going to have some documentation. But if a student comes in and has a situation for dependent care, then you need to document. You have the opportunity. You can increase that if you choose to do so. Also, consortium cost of attendance includes costs for schools involved and co-op programs. So all this goes into determining the cost of attendance for Pell. I don't know of a school in North Carolina that would not have the highest cost of attendance even at our community colleges. There may be some I'm not aware of, and Sean may correct me if there is, but most of our schools in North Carolina actually have the cost of the highest cost that's on the payment schedule. Just to let you guys know, prior to going back into the financial aid office, I spent about 12 years in the lending community. So I was working, I worked at Sallie Mae, and then most recently, right before going back into the financial aid office, I worked at College Foundation. So I was here about 3 years, and right before healthcare passed, which those of you who don't know, with healthcare, student loan reform was attached to that bill, which meant that the federal government took over the student loan program and required every school to utilize the direct loan program. Prior to that, it was a choice. Schools could participate in the direct loan program. At that point, it was a requirement. Very odd thing to be up underneath a healthcare bill, right? But it was. So we knew that what I was doing was going to be obsolete, and as the dear Lord blessed me, I took a job on Thursday, healthcare passed on Sunday, and I'm back in financial aid again for now 5 years again. So just to give you background where I was, I worked at Atlantic Christian College, because I'm so old, the college I'm at now had a whole different name when I started. It changed names to Barton College. I was assistant director there. And then I went to work at ECU, was assistant director at ECU at the main campus, and then I became the director of student services and financial aid at the School of Medicine. I know we have some grad schools here that Pell doesn't apply to, of course. And then that's when I started doing and traveling around the state and the Southeast. So there's not many schools of you that I don't either know the people there or have at least visited your campus. And there's some wonderful campuses in North Carolina. It was the best part of my job. My youngest son, who's now 16, was 3 or 4. And he was in his preschool, and they were having career day. And so they asked him what, he had to talk about what his daddy did, because that was easier for him to describe. His dad was a principal, and my husband was going back to get his doctorate. So he described it as, my daddy teaches my brother. My son was in the middle school, so in his mind he was teaching. He didn't know what a principal was at 3 and a half. Teaches my brother, and he reads books, because he was seeing him read for his doctorate, right? And he takes my brother to school. That was what he said his dad did. What's your mama do? She goes to visit her friends. That's all I did. So. That's very positive, right? But again, it relates to, as you say, you're in a really good place in North Carolina with a lot of good people. So again, I'm feeling a little nostalgic today, evidently, so I'm just giving you all sorts of stuff. Calculating the cost of attendance. You have to know your cost of attendance. Again, all the schools in North Carolina that I'm aware of, I think, are at the higher level. Some of us cost more because we're private institutions compared to the community colleges. For Pell, yes, ma'am.
And so when you calculate cost of attendance, that's like for the whole school. You don't do it per student, right?
That is correct, except there are some ways for Pell you would do it based on the whole school and those norms. But if you're at a situation where a student comes in and has expenses, education expenses over and above what you calculate as your average, you have the ability to increase that student's cost of attendance based on dependent care expenses.
Yes, so
Something-
you can adjust it if they come to you.
You can adjust it if they come to you, but be very careful on back